What's up guys, welcome back. And finally, after so much time has gone by, there's actually some awesome info discovered that we are going to go over in this video about the single most anticipated game for Nintendo in recent memory, and that is none other than Metroid Prime 4. As you know, the game was delayed and restarted development, announced back in January this year, and there has been little to no information since then, until now that is. So if you enjoy this one and are looking forward to Metroid Prime 4, as I'm sure most of you are, then be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, since we'll cover new info on Metroid Prime 4 here, of course, when it happens, and for the technical side of things for the game as well. So, to much of fans' joy, Retro Studios is confirmed to be back in full force making Metroid Prime 4 and doing so from the beginning. Basically starting over and scrapping whatever Nintendo had that wasn't working with the original game, which I personally hope we do get to see some leaked footage of that at some point to see just how bad it really was. However, to understand how big a deal it is that Retro Studios is making Metroid Prime 4, you have to go back to the first Metroid Prime game, which was at the time a revolutionary game that set a new standard graphically in 2002 on the GameCube, and a new standard for the gameplay, moving the series into first person, but not as a shooter, but as a adventure/exploration game. One of the key things about Retro Studios is that they always push their hardware to its limits, and the project they are given, they are always trying to hit the targeted 60 frames per second. In fact, all three Metroid Prime games, including both Donkey Kong Country games, hit 60 frames per second and were all technical showcases for the hardware at the time. The only game in recent memory that reminds me of a Retro Studios type game somewhat is the game I'm currently playing right now, which is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The map and the exploring of the multi-layered and vertical style of the levels reminds me very much of Metroid Prime and even some of Zelda. So thinking about all this with Retro Studios, the interesting thing is that we haven't seen any actual new game from them yet running on new hardware since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, which came out in early 2014, nearly 6 years ago now, since we're almost going into 2020 in just a little over a month. So fast forward to the Switch, and it will be 3 years old in March 2020, and still by then we likely won't be seeing Metroid Prime 4 yet. So the question is, what console will Metroid Prime 4 release on? Will it become an eventual new, more powerful Switch exclusive, or will they release a more graphically impressive, better running, and more detailed Metroid Prime 4, say in 2022 or so, on the new, more powerful Switch, which we know is coming, and still release it on the original Switch by holiday of that year, which I want to remind you guys is 3 years from now, since we are just entering holiday 2019. And this question is now getting even more interesting and even more important to consider now that we have brand new info on what Retro Studios is actually going to be using to make the graphics for this game in Metroid Prime 4. Retro Studios is hiring a visual effects artist, VFX, that will be using state-of-the-art graphic software that normally only AAA developers use. We're talking the best of the best stuff here, guys. These programs are none other than Substance Designer, Substance Painter, Maya, and Houdini. The clip I showed at the start of the video are all AAA games that are using Substance for the physically based materials in today's big budget games, where they create worlds with realistic mud, snow, cloth materials, and so forth. And you've seen examples of this in quite a few games, AAA games, in the current generation, like with Uncharted 4, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and even the upcoming Last of Us 2. They're all made in Substance. Basically, it is the main thing that has separated the Nintendo Switch from being able to run AAA games from the PS4 due to it simply not having the bandwidth, the memory, or the processing power to run games with that level of physically based rendering, tessellation, texture detail, and physics, which in turn has led to many games simply not being ported to the Switch. To give you a better idea, guys, let me show you some quick video explanations of Substance Designer and Substance Painter.
In simple terms, Substance Designer is an application used to create textures. It uses a node-based interface where you work in a graph connecting nodes. Substance Designer works like a digital compositing tool where you are combining artist-friendly nodes such as noises, warps, blends, and tile generators to create various patterns and shapes. Connecting nodes is how you will create your textures. You can also publish a Substance material, which can then be loaded into an application using a Substance plugin. Substance Designer is a rich and capable texturing tool. Its primary use is to create base materials. You can work procedurally with scan data or textures, or a mixture of the two. Technical artists also use Substance Designer to create various utility nodes and tools to aid in the texturing and production pipeline.
Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about Substance Painter and what actually is Substance Painter and why it might help you. So I will put some things in the background to show you some of the content that are made from some of the biggest AAA companies, and I'll just go through exactly what the whole idea of PBR, Substance, and what it can help you achieve on a day-to-day basis. So if you're somebody who wants to take the quality of their game to the next level, you're interested in 3D art, and maybe you've not used a texturing piece of software like Substance Painter before, I can't recommend it enough, because it's truly a one-stop shop for all your texturing needs. When it comes to making an asset within a 3D program, you can bring it straight into Substance Painter. You can bake any of the high polygon meshes that you might have to bake the textures all within the program. Then you can, just like you would with a standard Photoshop with all the layers you have, you can paint, you can apply scratches, masks, grunges, dirt, whatever it needs to be to specific parts of that model, just to breathe extra life into something that might have originally been a flat texture on your model. You can actually make it look like it's truly something that you would see in the real world.
Now, developers who use Substance, the 3D application, they also use other 3D application software to generate those designs into a game or a cinematic into polygon models. For many AAA developers, they use the applications called Maya and Houdini. Maya is great for 3D model and animation creating, while Houdini is also good for that, but better suited for procedurally generated models, such as large amounts of NPCs in a scene or various trees and branches that need to all follow a set of generated rules connected to nodes in the program itself. Now, keep in mind though that these programs costs hundreds of dollars to use, and the program Maya costs $3,500 to use if you want to buy it outright. So yeah, it's mainly for AAA game developers, and in a lot of cases even for movie creation and film as well. So what is the awesome part about all this? Well, Retro Studios is using all of those programs we just talked about and applications and more so to develop Metroid Prime 4. And this is all confirmed in a brand new hiring position for a new lead VFX artist for Retro Studios. And as we know, this is going to be for Metroid Prime 4 because that's the only game they're 100% working on right now. And here's a screen cap of that job listing for safekeeping, just in case this is removed later. But we'll go over the key parts here. Take a look at this. Look at the description of Retro Studios as a developer here. It says, Retro is a state-of-the-art game development studio, working in conjunction with Nintendo to bring award-winning games to Nintendo's cutting-edge next-generation platforms. It doesn't say Nintendo Switch or anything, it says cutting-edge next-generation platforms. That's pretty interesting. So keeping that in mind, here are some of the duties and requirements, and this might be the biggest confirmation yet that Nintendo's new, more powerful Switch is not only completed in terms of its R&D and whatnot, but it's already being worked with and well in development for software and games by Nintendo's own developers such as Retro Studios here. So some of the duties and requirements for this lead VFX position, it says, work with the development management team to execute the determined style and tone of visual effects for the final product. Responsible as an individual contributor for creating high quality, exemplar, real-time visual effects that set the standard for the team both in-game and in cinematics. Evaluate and promote the use of appropriate techniques and systems to support VFX goals, and to keep the team mind you, Retro Studios, up to date with industry standards. Now remember that one, and we'll come back to it in a minute. Then it goes on to say, expert level experience with real-time effects editors such as Unity, UDK, Popcorn Effects, etc. High proficiency in 2D effects such as After Effects, Trapcode, Particular, Toon Bloom, etc. High proficiency with simulation software such as Houdini, Maya Fluids, Bifrost, Foom Effects, etc. High proficiency with Maya for modeling and texturing, Substance Designer, and Painter. Those are the biggest ones right there to look at. So basically, Nintendo has the console hardware ready. Now they're getting their goals lined up for Metroid Prime 4, and from what it appears, they are going all out on this game. It looks like they're going to be making this the absolute best in terms of graphical detail and visual effects possible, and also going back to that key line we were talking about before, promoting the use of appropriate techniques and systems to support VFX goals and to keep the team up to date with industry standards. What that sounds like is that Retro Studios' goal is to make Metroid Prime 4 not only look amazing for a Nintendo console, but they're going to be keeping in line with the updates to the industry standards in terms of the quality they're going for, which means that Metroid Prime 4 is likely going to employ the latest and greatest graphical techniques that will be able to make it stand out on its own versus the competition in the market at that time when it does come out eventually, which seems like it's probably going to be 2022 is my guess. And as an evolving project basically, since they will be upgrading its graphics as they go, as they brought it out to match the industry standard. So after seeing all this, I'm extremely excited, guys, for the future of Metroid Prime for Nintendo. It's looking like Retro Studios is taking this very, very seriously, and Nintendo is providing them with the funding and materials needed to make an amazing looking game. And if they are already working on this new Switch hardware, which is what it appears they are in fact doing, the question then comes up, will Metroid Prime 4 still even release on the original Nintendo Switch OG in 2022 or so? It's anyone's guess, of course, but from how they are approaching development of this game, it's looking like they want no limits on the design of it so they can make this the absolute best it can be. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was in fact a new Switch exclusive game if the cost of porting to the original Switch ends up being too high for Retro Studios, meaning they have to sacrifice the frame rate to 30 frames per second or below, for example, and remove a lot of the visual effects that could ruin their vision for the game. Remember, Metroid Prime is all about the atmosphere, right? And to make the atmosphere the best it can be, this might end up being Retro Studios' choice, since Nintendo is wanting them to make it the best they can and giving them the tools to make it that way. Also, another question is if they have to sacrifice too much to get it running on the original Switch, and it looks drastically worse than the more powerful Switch version, would that downgraded port actually be worth doing at that point? These are just all honest questions that we'll have to wait and see about, since Retro Studios isn't Nintendo necessarily, right? Nintendo's in-house teams definitely make games differently and tend to go for a simpler art style. They probably would release whatever the next 3D Mario or Mario Kart game is on both the original Switch and the more powerful Switch model, but in the case of Metroid Prime 4, we'll have to wait and see how much freedom Retro Studios has with the game, and if Nintendo just tells them to go nuts and make it the best they can for this new more powerful Switch, and maybe they'll have another team downport the game to the original Nintendo Switch at that point if they see sales potential is there for what likely will be a watered down port and downgraded port of Metroid Prime 4 to squeeze out more sales of the game. Those are the unanswered questions that we have about that part of it. However, the really exciting thing and the main point of the video is that Retro Studios appears to be developing Metroid Prime 4 with the goal of making it probably the most technically and graphically impressive game ever for a Nintendo console, with these applications they're using to make the game. And by 2022 or so, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlet will already be in their second years in the market, so these goals for Metroid Prime 4 appear to be falling right in line for it to look very impressive for Nintendo during that time of the next generation console race. All this is just more indication that we have a lot to look forward to with Nintendo here, and Metroid Prime 4 is going to be one of those games that will hopefully be one of those watershed moments where we can all look back and say, wow, Retro Studios really did it, they pulled it off, and this game is amazing. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section. Are you excited for Metroid Prime 4? What do you think about this information? I think it's really exciting. It shows great promise for the game, and it's sounding like it's going to be absolutely amazing looking as far as a technical aspect is concerned. So if you did enjoy this one, guys, please hit the like button, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.